There was a tall man with a fair and noble face, dark-haired and grey-eyed, proud and stern of glance. His garments were rich, and his cloak was lined with fur, and he had a collar of silver in which a single white stone was set. His locks were shorn about his shoulders. On a baldric he wore a great horn tipped with silver that now was laid upon his knees. Boromir, son of Denethor II, was born in the year 2978 of the Third Age. He was born 5 years before his brother Faramir. Between the brothers there was great love ever since they were young, all the more so because Boromir acted as Faramir's protector. Their mother, Lady Finduilas of Dol Amroth, died when he was just 10 years old and Faramir was 5. And while their father Denethor was always stoic, it was at that point that he became even more grim and silent than before. A year after Faramir was born, Denethor rose to become the ruling steward of Gondor, with Boromir becoming heir apparent, inheriting the Horn of Gondor. Throughout their childhood and even into early adulthood, Denethor showed clear favour towards Boromir, and loved him too much, perhaps, the more so because they were unlike. With his father's approval, Boromir grew to be a valorous warrior, highly skilled in all kinds of arms, and with his own interest in warfare, tales of old battles, and eventually he grew to be a commander in the Gondorian military. Faramir grew in the opposite direction, becoming a man of letters and poems. Both Boromir and Faramir had the same prophetic dream of Rivendell the night before Sauron's attack on Osgiliath, which they understood little of. Their father, who was versed in the lore of Gondor, only told them that Rivendell, or Imladris, was a dale far to the north, where Elrond Half-Elven lived. While Sauron once again attacked Osgiliath at the dawn of the War of the Ring, Boromir commanded an army to hold the last bridge, preventing the orcs from following them and becoming a hero of his people. Still, the dream continued to haunt the brothers, to the point that Faramir eventually became intent on seeking out Imladris, the better to understand what it might mean and see the place for himself. Boromir would not have it, especially as his brother was a gentleman of literature. And so he took up the task, seeking to protect his brother and journeying for 110 days through the Gap of Rohan and the lands to the west of the Misty Mountains. The land had fallen into decay and was no longer easy to travel, the north-south road having crumbled away. Close to Tharbad, he crossed the Greyflood River using a dangerous ford formed by a ruined bridge and lost his horse. The rest of the way he travelled on foot. It was when he finally reached Rivendell that he was in time to attend the Council of Elrond. Representatives from all free peoples and lands of the Westlands spoke about the threats that faced them, and Boromir himself spoke on the Council of Gondor, their vigilance, and the struggle to keep Mordor's forces from crossing the Anduin. However, he had not come seeking military aid, but rather their counsel. He told the gathering of his dreams, and all became clear. Aragorn presented the shards of Narsil, and Frodo Baggins presented the One Ring, Isildur's bane. It was then that Boromir tried to convince the council to let him take the One Ring to Gondor, to be used for the defence of the realm. Elrond explained that it could not be used by anyone else except for Sauron. For any other purpose, it would twist the user's intentions and deeds to evil eventually. Disheartened, Boromir intended to return to Minas Tirith. For the sake of protection on the journey, he joined the Fellowship of the Ring to do so. After ploughing through the snow of the mountains of Caradhras, Boromir proposed that they should travel southward, on the west side of the Misty Mountains, as the Redhorn Pass was blocked, and instead pass either through the Gap of Rohan or cross the Isen and go through the southern lands of Langstrand and Lebanon. Gandalf believed these lands were no longer safe thanks to Saruman's treachery, and the company voted instead to pass through the mines of Moria, much to Boromir's disapproval. Though he went along with the company, his anger got the better of him upon reaching the doors of Durin, finding out that Gandalf did not know the password. That same anger caused him to throw a stone into the dark water, and the Watcher in the water arose. The company were able to escape into the mines, but only after fighting off an attack by the Watcher against Frodo. A valiant fighter, Boromir kept the armies of orcs at bay within Moria, blocking the western door and hewing the arm of a cave troll in the chamber of Mazarbul. His great horn, gifted to him as a child, came in handy, as the Balrog chased the company across the bridge of Khazad-dûm, its sound causing the orcs to pause, at least for a moment. Ever wary, the Fellowship's escape into Lothlorien weighed heavily on Boromir's mind. He warned against it, calling the woods perilous, and that few escaped unscathed, though it was truer to say that those who were evil, or brought evil to Lothlorien, were the only ones that had any reason to fear. After uneasy rest and conversation in the Golden Wood, the Lady Galadriel gifted him a golden belt. And yet, the presence of the ring, ever creeping at the back of Boromir's mind, consumed his thoughts as the company travelled down the River Anduin. Though he shared a boat with Merry and Pippin, his anxious paranoia caused him to paddle closer to Frodo, making the other hobbits uneasy, Pippin even noticing a strange glint in his eye. That said, it was Boromir who alerted the group that they were approaching the rapids of Sarn Gebir, with enough time for them to turn back. Again, he advised that they leave the river and head west and south towards Gondor, but Frodo had no intention of doing so. With all of the tension caused by the ring, the breaking of the Fellowship would soon be near. Upon reaching Nen Hithol, it was time for the company to decide on their next course of action. Following Frodo into the forest, Boromir once again tried to persuade him to take the ring to Minas Tirith. But the lure of the ring on his mind was already too great. He saw himself as a mighty king who would overthrow Sauron, rescue his people, and lead Gondor to victory and glory should the ring become his. Rage overcame him, and he tried to take the ring by force, but Frodo used its power to disappear. And by the time he was gone and the ring's influence diminished, Boromir was overwhelmed at the realization of what he had done. He wept and called for Frodo to return, but it was too late. Returning to the company, all Boromir would say was that they argued, and Frodo had disappeared. Merry and Pippin immediately ran into the woods to look for their friend, and Boromir followed them for protection. It was then that they were surrounded by dozens of orcs. Many of them were slain by Boromir, but they kept coming in waves. Boromir sounded the great horn once again, shielding Merry and Pippin as they tried to make their way back to the camp. But it was too late. He was pierced by many arrows, but never stopped fighting until he fell, and the hobbits were taken away. By the time Aragorn found Boromir, he was still alive, surrounded by at least 20 orcs that he had slain, and still holding his sword, though the blade had been broken at the hilt, and his great horn cloven in two. Before he finally passed, Boromir told Aragorn of his regret and mistakes in trying to take the ring from Frodo, and asked for forgiveness, which Aragorn granted, redeeming the proud Gondorian before he breathed his last. Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas laid Boromir's body in one of their boats, with his shattered horn and sword laid on his lap, and the weapons of his enemies at his feet. Singing a lament for the fallen son of Gondor, they set his funeral boat adrift, watching it be carried over the falls of Rauros. 3 nights later, his brother Faramir would have another vision while sitting on the banks of the Anduin in Osgiliath. A boat floating past him, and the great horn sounding in the distance. The 2 halves of the horn washed ashore, and he carried them to Denethor, the last relic of one of the greatest warriors Gondor has ever known. Hi everyone, Happy New Year, hope you've had a good one so far. Thank you so much for watching and listening with me. This is going to be the start of a new, relaxing series of lore, going a bit closer into character backstories and making it into a relaxing storytelling experience to chill to and perhaps learn something that you might not have known about the character before. I hope you all enjoyed this, and if you want to see more, please let me know down in the comments. You know I love it when you all comment, it's my favourite thing in the world. Please also don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Let me know which character you'd like to see next as well. I'll be keeping a lookout to see who's the most popular. And I'll see you in the next video.